So the first one that I take the most pride in is my first playthrough also Permadeath format, which these days I play almost every game in that format. I came up with this first in 2016, or at least I had thought about the idea for a long time, and then I finally did one, which was the original Diablo. So I'd never played the Diablo series at all, and I love Blizzard games, so I thought that'd be a good opportunity, and I even made my channel art to show off that that was my first one, but then I liked it so much I kept it. So the whole idea is you go into a playthrough completely blind, you know nothing about it, you don't take any advice, and you're allowed to basically do anything in the game, but you obviously have to come up with it yourself. So you might come up with some kind of cheese build or overpowered stuff, but you wouldn't feel bad about it even if you did, because that's intrinsic to the format, is that you only have one life, so there's no room for error. And it's also under the philosophy that most games are made to be able to be beaten without dying because they're just not that hard. So the alternative to this format is basically, those are my two criteria for what I love about games, is I love to get immersed in them and I love hard modes. So if you combine the two, you get this format. And so for games that seem like they're not suited for a first playthrough, also Permadeath, where you are expected to die a lot, for example, Dark Souls, even the subtitle that the developers gave it was Prepare to Die Edition. And so the point is, if you assume it's going to be a game where you can't do this format, then the alternative is make it a hard mode. Now, how do you make a first playthrough a hard mode? For example, with Dark Souls, I did the one stat only first playthrough, or a class build, meaning like I choose one stat at the beginning and I can only get that stat and I can only use what that class should use. So if it's strength, you can only use two-handed weapons, you can't use shield, you can't use range, etc. So you go in with that mentality, so you still make a hard mode even out of a first playthrough, even if you're allowed to die. Just as an overall measure of the format, it makes everything so much more immersive. And it's especially cool in story games because you wouldn't really expect it, but I've done like Permadeath Phoenix Wright. That was a very satisfying thing. It takes whatever the game offers you and just makes it that much more immersive and tense and high stakes. It makes it feel actually like real life in a way. Like if you die, it's over and you can't do it again for, let's say, 6 months is what I do, but you can make it a year, you can make it forever. For the rest of your life, you can never play the game again, which would kind of go along with the philosophy of, you know, there's so many games out there, you'll never have enough time to play them anyway, so that puts it as a high stakes. If you really want to play it, you have to earn the right. Some of my biggest failures are falling off the chandelier in LA Noire after I was doing so good. Usually the stuff that ends the playthroughs is like something that is not intrinsic to the mechanics. So like in Danganronpa, I lose to the little DDR thing after the, you know, it's like a rhythm game after you beat the case. Or LA Noire, I fall off the chandelier. Those mechanics are not intrinsic in the game, or not what you'd expect, right? You would expect, okay, you have to solve the case, you have to answer questions, you have to interrogate people, you even have to do gunplay in LA Noire, but I wasn't expecting those mechanics. And so the first one I ever did was the original Diablo, which I did not complete. One of the more recent ones I did was Pokemon Y. And of course, you can expand the format. So for example, when I say I successfully beat Pokemon Y, it was only permadeath for my trainer. It wasn't for every Pokemon. So you could expand it and say, for games like that, not only is it a first playthrough permadeath, but it's also for every one of your units. Kind of like in a Final Fantasy game, if you were to say, like, if one of your units dies, they can't come back for the rest of the playthrough. Fire Emblem is a series that does that inherently already, right? If one of your units dies, you don't get them back.